Hey, your vice president.
You set it up for emailing to anybody who wants to.
All right.
This isn't really
Today we have a
perfect,
guest
it just
speaker.
looks like. Yeah.
It's Larry Klayman with Judicial Watch, Freedom Watch. He's a guest of Mr.
They're
James.
hoping
So
everybody gets blurry there.
I'm going to let Stephen go ahead and introduce Mr. Klayman.
It is my great pleasure to introduce Larry Klayman, who is a defender of freedom and democracy and a friend.
Thank you. That's a very to-the-point introduction, which is very rare these days. And I want to thank Stephen James for inviting me here. Known as Jesse James, he's the legend of Chico State. And probably most of you know he's building a wall and he's going to have Mexico pay for it. Right. I also want to thank John, the president, for inviting me. And Rich, who told me that he went to Whittier College and in fact was an Orthogonian. Richard Nixon actually started, apparently, the Orthogonian Society. And I'm reminded of the fact, I'm going to be talking about government ethics and honesty and optimism, that I have on my website at freedomwatchusa.org a little cartoon with Richard Nixon. It says, "I'm not a crook by today's standards."
All right.
That pretty much tells you everything. I'm very pleased and happy to be in front of the Optimist Club. And I want to add just one line to your credo there. I read it when I came in. Appreciate today because tomorrow is going to be even worse.
You're an optimist.
I'm an optimist. In fact, obviously I'm joking, guys, because I am an optimist. And I wouldn't do what I do if I wasn't an optimist. I wouldn't stick my neck out. And I might also thank Stephen's daughter, who's my chief of staff, excellent chief of staff. And I'm going to explain one of the cases that we won recently, which is a huge case, maybe one of the bigger victories in the history of government litigation against the NSA. But let me give you a little background as to who I am. I went to undergraduate school at Duke University, which was Richard Nixon's law school. Ironically, I graduated on the same day that Judge Kenneth Starr graduated, and that brings everything fast forward with regard to the Clinton years, and I'll tell you a little bit about that because it's relevant to what's going on today. I started in Miami, Florida as a trial lawyer. I went to the Department of Justice in 2 years in Washington, D.C. I helped break up the telephone company, AT&T, during the presidency of Ronald Reagan. I left, went into international trade practice, started my own law firm 2 years later, and in the process of representing individuals and companies in a Washington, D.C. litigation and international trade practice. I speak French and Italian. I studied overseas when I was in college. I saw just how corrupt the government was, that big money influenced decision making. The merits frequently were overlooked, but it's gotten much worse in the last many years since I've been a lawyer. I became a member of the Florida Bar in 1977. I'm about your age. We're all contemporaries. And we've all seen the degradation of ethics and morality in this country. You know, it was our founding father, our great founding father, John Adams, and our second American president, who said, just days before signing the Declaration in my native city of Philadelphia, where I was born, without ethics, morality, and religion, it doesn't matter how many times you change your rulers or your forms of government, there will be no lasting liberty. And we've seen that today. We've seen that in our leaders, our so-called leaders. We've seen a total breakdown in our executive, legislative, and judicial branches. And I'm nonpartisan, by the way. I am a conservative, and I'm proud of it. I'm a registered Republican, but I'm kind of the anti-Republican. I ran for the Senate in Florida in 2003, 2004 for the seat currently occupied by Marco Rubio. I didn't win, obviously. I started Judicial Watch after that, having started Freedom Watch after that, having started Judicial Watch before that. But the reality is that the system has totally collapsed. And a statement just in the last few days by Justice Ginsburg of the Supreme Court pretty much says it all, is that she attacked Donald Trump. And whether you like Donald Trump or not, she was suggesting vote for Hillary Clinton. And the judicial canons of ethics say that a judge is not to be involved in electoral politics for obvious reasons. But it's interesting, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, John Roberts, who claims to be a conservative, who was thought to be a conservative when George W. Bush nominated him as Chief Justice during his administration, came out with an annual report a few years ago and said that justices of the Supreme Court's ethics are beyond reproach. They should not be questioned. And I'm not joking. That the judicial canons of ethics don't apply to Supreme Court justices, and in fact, they may even be unconstitutional. And because justices are confirmed by the Senate, they've been vetted, so therefore they're, in effect, like God. Now, that's an attitude that we've seen not just in the judiciary, and I am in the court system every day, and I've had some really big successes in my life. I'm the only lawyer ever to have a court rule that a president committed a crime. It was in the context of a civil case involving FBI files that President Clinton and Hillary Clinton obtained on their adversaries. I also recently obtained, with the help of Stephen's daughter who wrote the winning brief, Dina James, we enjoined the National Security Agency from gathering all of the telephonic metadata on hundreds of millions of Americans. And one can only wonder what they do with the metadata, since, as the court pointed out, with all of that, which they keep for 5 years, they haven't caught one terrorist plot. So you wonder what they're doing with it. Is it used for blackmail? Is it used for extortion? Or is it because, or do people make decisions because they think that the National Security Agency and our other intelligence agencies have the goods on them? Does that help explain some of the rulings, for instance, of Chief Justice Roberts of the Supreme Court, who inexplicably at the last minute flipped on Obamacare, first found that it wasn't a tax, then found it was a tax, and then ruled that it was constitutional? Those kinds of things. But let me talk about the current situation, because that's something which I think needs to be discussed. A few people understand what really goes on in Washington, although the American people are starting to understand. And the attitude of Washington, which permeates state capitals like Sacramento and others — I'm a citizen of Florida, Tallahassee — is that we are the new American nobility. We're not to be questioned. We're part of a club. We're part of the National Corrupt Politicians Club. There's the American League, there's the National League. But whoever wins presidential elections or controls the Senate or House, we divide up the money, and our power will continue unchecked. We have lunch with each other. We go to soirees in Georgetown or wherever they do it here in Sacramento. By the way, I love this area. It's a great area. I come up here a lot. But we're all part of this club, and the American people be damned. And we've seen that recently with the administration of President Barack Obama. And we've seen it recently and in the past with Hillary Clinton, who may very well be the next president of the United States. And this is not an endorsement of anybody. It's not an endorsement of Donald Trump as a head of a nonprofit. I don't do that. But I'm going to talk plainly based upon my experience and what I know. Let's first talk about Hillary Clinton. During the late 1990s, I helped uncover at Judicial Watch — probably it was the primary catalyst — a scandal that was known as Chinagate. The Clintons were taking money for the Democratic Party from communist Chinese. They were doing that because, as you might remember, the first years of the Clinton administration were rocky. There were a lot of scandals. There was Whitewater. There was controversy over Bill Clinton putting into effect in the military a don't ask, don't tell policy, which today is kind of irrelevant, the way things have evolved. But he wasn't doing well, and in fact, the Democrats lost control of the House of Representatives to Newt Gingrich and the Republicans in 1994. So they needed money to win, and they took it from the Chinese. And I had uncovered, through a simple Freedom of Information Act records request at the Commerce Department, that the Clintons, through Secretary Ron Brown at the time, were selling seats on trade missions to China and elsewhere to businessmen, helping them do business in exchange for large campaign contributions to the Democratic Party in the Clinton-Gore campaign. I later uncovered that the Clintons had like a menu, ironically a Chinese menu. And by the way, I'm an international trade lawyer, so I don't mean this negatively towards Chinese people at all. But you choose one from column A, column B, column C, pay $100,000, go on a trade mission, get a judgeship, get a commissionership, stay in the White House overnight in the Lincoln bedroom. You can do it for free if you promise to sleep with Hillary in the Lincoln bedroom. Right. She'll pay you. Then again, it's questionable whether she'd want to sleep with you, but we won't get into that. But they were selling everything. I used to joke because the Clintons had a cat named Socks, and they had sold nearly everything to the Chinese. I said, let's hope they don't sell socks to the Chinese. Fast forward. They committed 40 scandals. Monica Lewinsky was the least of it. I had worked with Congressman Bob Barr to introduce articles of impeachment for Bill Clinton. Hillary Clinton was intimately involved in the sale of trade missions. Ron Brown resented it, actually, that she had told him to do it, and he used a rather off-color word with his mistress, Nolanda Hill, who I later got to know, and she revealed what was going on because she had tax problems and wanted my help to try to defend her. But Ron Brown used to tell Hillary, I'm no MFing tour guide Hillary. Ron Brown wound up going down in a plane crash mysteriously in Croatia after all this came out. But this was not the only Clinton scandal that triggered Chinagate. And the Clintons have a history of selling government access for campaign contributions, speaking fees, contributions to the Clinton Library, and now to their foundation. Hillary Clinton is the most corrupt person, in my opinion, ever to seek the presidency of the United States. He makes Richard Nixon look like a saint. And that's why I mentioned earlier what I have up on the website. There is no crime that is beneath Hillary Clinton. She even tried to steal the White House furniture in 2000 on the way out the door, got caught and had to bring it back. That's who we're dealing with here. But notwithstanding the fact that she's now running for president, I'm going to explain the dynamics of what's happened in the last few days with her email scandal. And in fact, I uncovered a similar thing during the Clinton administration where 1 million email were suppressed in the White House. And nothing happened then either in terms of consequence. Because the establishment circles the wagons. They want to keep that money train to themselves. And that helps explain why the establishment Republicans today, most of them are actually supporting Hillary Clinton. They're trying to submarine Donald Trump because Trump, they feel, may break up that money train. He doesn't need their money. And he will also destroy their hold on power. So they'd rather lose to Hillary Clinton and 4 years later run somebody against her, and in the meantime, everybody can continue to cash in. The Republicans may not be socialists, but the Republicans are corrupt, the establishment in and of themselves. So watch what happens in Cleveland next week. It's probably not going to be pretty, and that's why Donald Trump is nominating, apparently, Mike Pence, because he's a solid conservative. He's hoping to hold off that revolt in the Republican Party. But let's come fast forward here. The Obama administration. President Obama, whose middle name is Hussein, not accidentally, his dad was born a Muslim. He was schooled in madrasa schools in Indonesia. That's not in dispute. He wears a ring that was given to him by his Pakistani friends that he used as his wedding ring when he married Michelle. It says, "My only God is Allah." He claims he's a Christian. I'm not here to bash Islam, or I'm not here to bash anything to that effect, but let's just talk about hard facts. For the last 7.5 years, he has favored his people, in effect, African Americans and his connection to Islam, over everybody else. And it's gotten to the point, notwithstanding his scandals with the IRS, Fast and Furious, which was border control agents furnishing guns to Mexican drug cartels, notwithstanding misusing the IRS to harass conservative groups seeking nonprofit status. I can go on and on. But the reality here is that he has fomented racial division in this country. I stood in front of the World War II memorial 2.5 years ago with Dina, Stephen's daughter, and I was there with Sarah Palin, with Senator Mike Lee, Senator Ted Cruz. And I kind of went on auto drive. I was tired. I had just argued a case in front of Judge Richard Leon with regard to the NSA's massive surveillance of telephone records, which was conducted under Obama's administration. I might add, George Bush did similar things, George W. Bush. I sued him as well during the time. I wasn't fortunate enough to get a judge as good as Leon, who ruled in my favor ultimately, and I'll tell you about that. But I stood in front of the World War II Memorial and I looked at the monument of Martin Luther King. Okay? And I'm a child of the 60s. I was born in 1951. And I admired Martin Luther King. We all did, regardless of his leanings, with socialist interests. I mean, he was a great man. And I looked at the memorial and I said, what we need to do, because this whole system is broken down, is that we need to wage peaceful, nonviolent revolution, like Martin Luther King did, like Mahatma Gandhi did in India and in South Africa to get some freedom for his people, the Indian people, like Lech Walesa did in Poland when they helped break the back of communism, thanks to John Paul II as well, and Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher. And I then said, Mr. President, you have to be the president for all the people, not just people that you favor. And Mr. President, get up off your knees, put the Quran down and come out with your hands up. That was paradoxical, that was satirical. And I was ripped on MSNBC for 2 weeks by the likes of Al Sharpton, that's my segue, and others, claiming that I was the spokesman of the Tea Party. Well, I guess I was speaking for the Tea Party. I was kind of, in effect, if I may say so, and maybe it sounds a little bit conceited, I was the Tea Party before the Tea Party was cool. But the reality is that those words ring true even more today. And we've seen a systematic effort by President Barack Hussein Obama over the last 7.5 years to do everything he can to harm our ally Israel in the Middle East, everything he can to create racial division by never talking about hate crimes against whites or Christians or Jews, but it's always about African Americans or Muslims. And it finally has come home to roost in a big way in Dallas, Texas, just about a week and a half ago. And this tells you a little bit about who I am and what we do at Freedom Watch. If you want to take a closer look, it's freedomwatchusa.org, freedomwatchusa.org, our website. But we stick our neck out. We have to be out in front. We have to set an example for the American people, because under the Obama administration, anytime you challenge them, people of all colors and creeds were called racists in one manner, shape, or form, and people were afraid to talk. So just a few days ago, I brought a lawsuit. I'm the guinea pig. I'm the lead plaintiff in Dallas, Texas, to seek to enjoin and get large damages for inciting violence and, in effect, resulting in serious bodily injury or death to law enforcement officials. Now, I'm a de facto law enforcement official. I'm a graduate of the Justice Department. I founded Judicial Watch and Freedom Watch, and I'm out there. So I made myself the lead plaintiff, and we're looking for plaintiffs to join us in this class action, hopefully police officers, law enforcement people. We want the American people to use peaceful, nonviolent means to make sure that everybody's treated equally in this country. And certainly there's been discrimination against African Americans, and that's not right when it happened, but it's not right when it happens against other people as well. I'm, in effect, a civil rights lawyer. So this case has been filed. It was against President Obama. It was against Louis Farrakhan, who is a vehement anti-Semite and anti-Christian head of the Nation of Islam. Many people think that he was responsible for the demise of Elijah Muhammad of the Nation of Islam, who founded it, and also Malcolm X. These people are not nice people, to put it mildly. And they have whipped up a race war. And as we speak, Al Sharpton is being served in New York today, among others. Now, let's go back a little bit here, because this is who we're dealing with now. And Obama, of course, came out recently and endorsed Hillary Clinton. What he got in exchange, probably got her vice presidential pick. It's probably going to be Cory Booker, someone a lot like Obama, who's the senator from New Jersey. Maybe he got other things. Frankly, Obama and Clinton don't like each other. That helps explain why Clinton never nominated her as vice president during the Clinton years. 80 people mysteriously vanished. I think the president didn't want to create an incentive for him to vanish at the time. But what we've seen recently with the FBI, and this is my transition to the NSA case, is something that surprised a lot of Washington analysts and consultants, and I'm going to take some questions at the end. The director of the FBI, Comey, a person who was made a director of the FBI as a Republican and who was thought to have integrity. He was Deputy Attorney General during the administration of George W. Bush. He opposed Bush doing warrantless wiretaps on people indiscriminately. That was admirable. The only reason he's FBI director is because Obama needed some judges confirmed by the Senate, and as part of the deal, Obama agreed to have Comey become FBI director for 10 years. Comey, as you all saw in the last few days, took a dive in saying, well, Hillary lied here, she lied here, she lied here with regard to emails, that she was grossly negligent in the way she handled classified material, but I'm not recommending prosecution. Well, that's a non sequitur. Now, why didn't Comey recommend prosecution? Could it be that the NSA and CIA, the intelligence agencies, dug up some stuff on him with their surveillance? We represent a whistleblower named Dennis Montgomery, who I brought forth to the FBI. I brought him forth to William Comey and his general counsel, James Baker, and got him immunity to produce 47 hard drives, 600 million pages of documentation showing that the CIA has been getting not just telephone information about everybody, but their financial records and everything about it. 156 judges, Supreme Court justices, including the Chief Justice, including Ginsburg, and prominent businessmen and senators and congressmen. Anybody who's prominent, they've been collecting this stuff. In fact, they're more powerful than the president himself. Could it be that Comey was blackmailed into this? That's a big question. It could also be that Comey, more characteristically in a Washington environment, realized that if he ever recommended prosecution of Hillary Clinton, the Democrats could block any future appointment. He's a government animal. And in Washington, even if the opposition party decides to block you, you're not going anywhere, even if your party is the president. That may help explain it as well. Or did he cut a secret deal with, as part of all of this, with Attorney General Loretta Lynch to basically deep six this prosecution? Did he get something in exchange from Loretta Lynch or whatever? This is speculation, but you know, this is the way Washington works. And the NSA, and this is a case, as I said, that Stephen's daughter played a material role in. We're lean and mean at Freedom Watch. We filed a lawsuit against Obama and the National Security Agency and the CIA and intelligence officials. And we got a courageous judge in Washington, D.C. to order them to stop getting all the telephonic metadata. And after that happened, it was ruled unconstitutional to do this under the Fourth Amendment, unreasonable search and seizure of private records. Congress was forced to change the law. We now have the USA Freedom Act, which says the telephonic metadata has to be kept in the hands of the telephone providers unless there's a warrant. I'm sure they're still violating the law. They're lawless. But we did succeed at doing that. But this is Washington today. It's mutual assured destruction. It's Supreme Court justices that want to be politicians. It's presidents who think they're king, although in my view, President Obama is no Martin Luther King for the reasons I said earlier. Whether it's executive orders on amnesty that have been ruled illegal or anything else, the executive branch believes that it's above the law. And then the legislative branch, which frankly just does it for show so they can go on Fox News, CNN, or MSNBC at night and get reelected, but accomplish almost nothing for the American people. And that helps explain the rise, not just of Donald Trump, who says, I'm going to burn the house down, figuratively speaking, and start over again, but also Bernie Sanders on the left, who is popular. It's this anti-establishment movement. It's let's throw all the bums out. You know, in our generation, There was a song by Janis Joplin written by Chris Christopherson, Bobby McGee. And a line in that song reminds me of this. Freedom is just another word for nothing left to lose. Freedom ain't worth nothing, but it's free. Well, today, our founding fathers are turning over in their graves. The great George Washington, the great Thomas Jefferson, who's my favorite, and the great John Adams and Ben Franklin and company. They pledged their honor, their sacred fortunes, and their lives to found a great nation. And that's why yours truly, as an honorary guest optimist, does what he does. Because I believe that we can restore this country. I believe that we're going to have to rise up. I believe it's going to have to be done outside of the courts. Occasionally we get a good judge who'll put his foot down, but most of them are politicized, if not intellectually corrupt when it comes to political cases. And I'm sure you've seen it in your own life, judges making decisions on the basis of who you are, not on the basis of the merit. Regrettably, that's our legal system. But we're going to have to rise up in a peaceful, nonviolent way. I think we're going to have to engage in civil disobedience, not like Black Lives Matter. We don't burn things down, we don't destroy things. But we need to rise up like Martin Luther King did, like Mahatma Gandhi did, like Lech Walesa did, like the Pope did, and others, to bring this country back. Because what we've got on the horizon here, we've got the likelihood of a President Hillary Clinton, as of today. Things may change, and I'm not telling you who to vote for. Speaking personally is another story. But if she becomes president, this 1-2 punch of Obama and Clinton could very well destroy this country. That's my opinion, because you've got here somebody who's tried to foment division in this country, who favors his people, and there's nothing wrong in and of itself with his people, but you have to be the president of all the people over everybody else. And then you've got somebody here, frankly, who's a hardened criminal, who will sell you out to the highest bidder for money. And that's what she was doing with that email server. The FBI didn't get into that. I firmly believe, just like she did back in the 90s, she was using that private server to make deals to sell her access and her authority as Secretary of State for money to the Clinton Foundation, our speaking fees and everything else. She left the White House with allegedly nothing. Now they're worth hundreds of millions of dollars. It just doesn't happen by itself. That being said, I want to thank you for being here. I want to leave a little time for questions. It's really my honor to be here. I am an optimist, and I really appreciate what you all stand for. We have to be optimists. We have to be positive, because without that, we're not going to change this country.
I believe everything you say, okay? I just don't know how you're going to get enough people to listen to you. It's just like the black man that was just killed in Minnesota. Have you seen his rap sheet? Most Americans have it, and the press is not going to put it in. So what can you possibly do unless you can get Bill Gates to put up $30 billion? Put your message out. How are you going to get it out there?
Well, first of all, Bill Gates is not putting up $30 million to do anything with regard to Barack Obama or Hillary Clinton. Bill Gates, as brilliant as he is, enabled Obama and Hillary Clinton. So Mark Zuckerberg at Facebook as well. Okay, but there are people out there who will financially contribute. We rely on contributions; they're tax deductible. But quite apart from that, I've come to the conclusion I need to bring fewer lawsuits. I have a private practice too. Fewer lawsuits and talk more and to educate. And that's why when Stephen mentioned the Optimist Club, I was really happy to come here, because I need to get out and tell people what's really going on. The establishment politicians don't want to discuss it. And that's why, Trump really hit a nerve here, because, a few months ago he came out about a year ago and he said, look, I know how it works. I bribed everybody in Washington. Now I don't have to bribe anybody. I'm worth the 8 to 10 billion. We'll see if he does that, of course. Now he's, of course, opening himself up to public financing, which I think is a mistake. But we'll see if he does that. But that's the problem here. So we need to get out there. People need in effect, to go to the streets in a nonviolent way, not like Occupy Wall Street, not like Black Lives Matter. Don't threaten people's lives. Don't hurt anybody. But we need to show the the government that we mean business. Thomas Jefferson said, when the people fear the government, there's tyranny. When the government fears the people, there's liberty. And Jefferson, who I believe was our greatest president, I rank Washington, Adams, and Reagan right behind them. That's my view. And I even give credit to John Kennedy for what he did. I was a kid at the time, as you were. But Jefferson said, you know, every other generation we're probably going to need a revolution just to clean house. He recognized that we would grow corrupt. I don't think he was talking about a bloodbath, but he was talking about the people rising up. And that's what we have to do and put our foot down. You know, we're old enough, we got nothing to lose. Freedom's just another word for nothing left to lose. And we have to set an example for the younger people to do the same thing in a positive way. So that's why I'm getting out to talk. We have to start speaking up. And that's what I did with this case against Obama, Sharpton, Farrakhan, Eric Holder, who was served last night, and Black Lives Matter. I'm speaking up using the courts.
Why are we so surprised about security information? Mr. Clinton became president, he put great effort into downgrading classified information, including it finally went to the nuclear world where he eliminated the no-loan zone, which for people who don't know that, no one person by himself could be near a weapon or the information about it or how it will be delivered in any way. Well, when you eliminated it, an individual, civilian individual in Los Alamos who filled his briefcase, went home and mailed it overseas. Why are we so surprised about any flow of information?
Yeah.
Is it just our ignorance?
Actually, just as a transition again, I brought a lawsuit against Wen Ho Lee, who released all of those nuclear codes, for the director of investigations of the Energy Department, who was called a racist when he went against Wen Ho Lee. Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton engaged in traitorous activity during their administration. They sold secrets about the United States concerning missile technology, concerning our plans with regard to defending Taiwan in exchange for campaign contributions. That's not in dispute. You might remember their then Secretary of State, his name escapes me right now, it'll come to me, was Berger, Sandy Berger, National Security Advisor. After Clinton left, he went to the National Archives because all of Clinton's records, at least those which they didn't destroy, were given over to the National Archives under the Presidential Records Act. Sandy Berger was filmed stuffing documents into his pants. It's the first time during the Clinton administration that anyone put anything in their pants rather than taking it out. But what actually saved Clinton from all of this, and this is what we were trying to get Clinton impeached for, not the Monica Lewinsky stuff, which was bad. You don't lie under oath and you don't have sex with an intern. But that actually was the lightning rod that took the press away from the Chinagate scandal, from the campaign finance scandal, which, by the way, the Republicans started to investigate and the Democrats dug up dirt on them, so they all went home happily ever after. That's the way it works. But yes, Clinton did compromise national security. Hillary was part of it, and they'll sell anything. And whatever you say about George W. Bush, look, the guy wasn't a great president. He kind of spent most of his time working out all day long, and made a big mistake in Iraq. He did all kinds, and the economy was in ruins when he left. But he wasn't a traitor. He wasn't, and neither was Richard Nixon. And I'll tell you something about Nixon, is that our current presidents would not leave under the same circumstance that Nixon left. At least he resigned and put the country first over his own interest, notwithstanding the fact that he had cut a deal with Gerald Ford for most likely to be pardoned. But yes, that's the long answer to your question.
The Tea Party was prominent, 4 years ago, 6 years. What's happened? They kind of died off. You don't hear much about Tea Party anymore.
Well, the Tea Party's there. And there's an article on our website, Larry Klayman, One Man Tea Party. Okay, we were doing the Tea Party before there was a name. Tea Party is essentially anti-establishment. It's populist. It's a group that wanted to bring out fiscal responsibility to the country. It is not racist the way it's been depicted. It's not racist at all. The Tea Party's there, and you're going to see, and I pray that this does not happen, in Cleveland. Cleveland, I believe, will explode. Okay, it's going to be Black Lives Matter in the streets and Tea Party in the streets, the more physical element of it, and others. And I was looking at a map today on Google. I mean, they've cordoned off everything around the convention center. It's like an armed camp. Cleveland, who many people called a mistake on the lake.
Well, plus California said they had patrol.
Yeah, right. The only good that can come of, I lived in Cleveland for a while. The only good that can come of this is that maybe Cleveland will get to start over when it's all done. It'll be in ruins.
So, you're obviously very courageous to do this kind of work. I'm curious what your experience has been. There's many speculative rumors about people that have crossed the Clintons having mysterious deaths. How have you reacted to that in your family, your personal life? How's that affected you?
That's a good question. During the judicial watch years, I did have security, but there's no protection to that. The most protection you have is sunlight, to be transparent, to be out there. It's worse if you don't speak up. It's worse if you don't bring cases, because if anything happens and you're out there, then people know who's likely responsible. But you are right. During the Clinton years, 80 people vanished. I had Linda Tripp, for instance, who I deposed twice. The person who had the semen-stained dress. She actually worked in the White House for Vince Foster, who also mysteriously died in Fort Marcy Park. Whether it was a suicide or a murder, I used to say it doesn't really matter. Trial lawyers don't have the conscience to kill themselves, you know. So he probably, it was not accidental, and he was actually Hillary's last male lover, I believe, if I may say something controversial. They had an affair, and Vince Foster, for what I was told, was a very honest person. He couldn't stand the fact that he was doing Hillary's bidding with regard to the IRS and FBI files and everything else. He very well may have committed suicide. He gave a speech, according to Linda Tripp, a few days before he died, that if you lose your reputation, you lose everything. He was talking to a prominent law school. My barber in Washington, he gave him a haircut 2 hours before he died, said he was in a good mood. He ordered a hamburger at the White House shortly before he died, and then he was found in Fort Marcy Park. I believe that Hillary Clinton, I don't think the law of averages say that she didn't kill 80 or have them hit, but maybe, you know, some. And who was her deputy chief of staff? Harold Ickes. Harold Ickes, one of the most corrupt people in Washington. Now at the top of Hillary's campaign ladder, was the lawyer for restaurant workers in New York, which is mafia. And I asked him a question at deposition, do you ever ask for any favors? He was deputy White House chief of staff, and from the mafia, and he came over the table at me, took his microphone off his lapel, puts it on the desk. I told the videographer, film him as he's going out. And he says in a southern accent, he's from Brooklyn, right? He says, Mr. Klayman, if I don't go to the bathroom, I'm going to leave something on your floor. This is the class of the Clinton administration. If they didn't have no class, if they didn't have low class, they'd have no class at all. And that's a kind of a line from Rodney Dangerfield, who's one of my favorite comedians. But it's true, they did vanish. But the best protection you have is to be out there and not to be afraid. And our founding fathers were not afraid. And we cannot be afraid. Yeah. Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here.